That's the origin. And then we grew up. And then we grew up and started signing leases.
Well, yeah, okay, so let's talk about that transition. I actually don't know the timeline. Did you get your first brick and mortar before or after you started working with all of your investors? Because you have a pretty cool investor story, right?
Yeah, we have a cool run of investors. I raised the first money in September of 2021, knowing that I needed to, get out of this temporary commissary kitchen I was in. Not that I didn't like them; it just wasn't a feasible. I look at everything in business as: is this scalable? Is this feasible? And how far can we go like this? And the one thing I knew was there's no way my life was going to continue waking up at 3 a.m. every day. I needed to make bagels and finding high school kids to come in and knead dough and roll bagels. It just wasn't realistic. So I knew I needed to find a commissary. I knew I needed to open our own location. So I raised a couple $100,000 from some local people, some, strategic people. And within a couple months, we signed a lease in Reading, Connecticut, which is not really a highly populated town, but it's a beautiful part of Connecticut, about 15 minutes north of where I am. And the intention there was to not only have our own storefront, but not really a storefront. Still, everything had to be ordered in advance. So, but what we learned there, how to make the dough without having to make it the morning of. So we were able to start making it a day or two before the bake, and we could keep it nice and cold, and then we could drive it to where we're baking it that night before or the morning of, and you didn't have all those issues of, is the mixer going to work today? So I hired a dough coach at that time with some of the money. This guy Michael was amazing, and we worked on, you know, what should the yeast structure be? We want to keep the same crust. How do we keep the crust without doing it? And we tried so many times. I mean, there were so many days where I thought I knew how to like keep bagels overnight in a refrigerator, and I would come in the next morning and they would be completely overproofed or underproofed, or sagging off the tray. I mean, the whole thing was an amazing learning process, obviously. But it took a lot. So we did that capital raise in September of 2021, opened our store in Reading. That allowed us to continue in Westport, where we had this shared kitchen, but rather than showing up there with flour, we replaced our mixers with refrigerators so that we could show up the day before with dough.
So
And, it,
smart and
and instead of needing 10 people in a morning, we needed 3 or 4.
so smart.
Um,
But you had to go kind of like seek that knowledge from an expert. I mean, it sounds like that was a really good idea of yours to invest some time and money in bringing someone in and not changing what you were doing, but teaching you how to do it in like a professional, scalable way.
Correct. Correct. Because, and I literally just got off the phone with someone who told me they have a great product in a different industry, and it's really amazing, and they want to raise money, but they don't know how to scale it. And I was like, well, before you raise too much money, find out if it's scalable. And we raised a couple $100,000, which in the grand scheme of raising capital is not a ton, but I still felt responsible to build a business. And in my view, worst case scenario was we had a great business that, if we don't scale beyond this, we'll make our money back in a year and I'll be able to pay my investors back.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but we did do that, and it worked. And we now had 2 stores operating, and I almost want to say it was our proof of concept that I had 2 stores operating that allowed us to raise the next pool of capital, which was $2 million, just shy of a year later. And when we did that capital raise, we brought in a lot of Hollywood heavyweights and a lot of sports people and really smart business people. And it's important for me, at least, when we were raising money, to make sure that the people we were aligning ourselves with, had a big picture in mind and wanted this to be something that scaled, and not just for the money you make when you scale a business, but also for the love of let's bring this product to as many people as we can. because it's awesome product and people love it and we need to share it. So the part I skipped on that was, before we did that large capital raise, I realized if we want to be in the right places, we need to meet the right people. And a lot of those people were in New York. Some of them were in Greenwich, Connecticut. Some of them were New Jersey. And a lot of them are also in the Hamptons. And I made it a point to make sure that every week we, quote, popped up in a different location so that we could spread what we're doing and we didn't just remain a Westport local business. We spent the entire summer of 2021 driving out to Watermill between South and East Hampton. And we borrowed a kitchen in a Greek restaurant, which was a nightclub. And every once in a while, we'd show up at 4 a.m. and there'd still be people there from the night before. But again, we were pre-selling bagels. And, the people you meet in Amagansett or in East Hampton or Watermill on a Saturday, buying pre-sold bagels that are like the hottest thing to get and they were selling out. Those are the people that then say, hey, you should meet my friend so-and-so. He's got a place here. Or you should meet this person. They raise money for these things. And it really worked out the way it was. I mean, we were, 1 week we're cooking in East Hampton. The next week we're, being set up in downtown Aspen for a big event that, had a line around the block. And then the next thing you know, we're in Miami. And the next thing you know, someone wants us in LA and somebody wants us in New York. And that's how we actually wound up meeting some of the investors that came in on that second round.